Why no one plays Kaveh? No one has him. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Okay, in all seriousness, with Genshin Impact's roster ever expanding to include upwards of 80 units, a growing challenge the developers face is how to make all of them accessible when there are so few banner slots available on a given basis. Unlike the vast majority of gachas where new characters are permanently implemented through the standard banner, for some reason Hoyo has elected to keep the majority of the game's 5-star characters as limited editions, preventing you from obtaining them outside of their event banners. On one hand, it prevents the unit pool from becoming too bloated and maintains the significance of every character, but on the other hand, as stated earlier, as more and more come out, that's another unit you have to squeeze into Genshin's already oversaturated list of rerun candidates. Looking at Paimon Moe's character release timeline, you can already see units going on over a dozen banner cycles without a rerun, making it effectively impossible for you to acquire those characters even if you want them. You can also learn more about that in my video on the problem with Genshin's banners if you're interested. While not as irrelevant as a 5-star roster, 4-star units are also facing a similar situation. With each passing banner cycle, 3 4-stars get to accompany the 2 featured 5-stars, giving you the opportunity to acquire target 4-star units. Something to note is that while 5-stars almost never join their permanent pool, all 4-stars in fact do. Right now as we speak, you have a chance of pulling for any of the 4-stars in the game. However, it's ill-advised to do so given the low probability of obtaining the specific one you want. As such, the player base relies equally as much on 4-stars being featured on event banners as they do 5-stars, bringing us to the topic of this video. Kaveh is presently the 4-star unit who has gone the longest without a rerun banner at 19 cycles. While others have come close, Hazel, Razor, and Mika to name a few, and Goro once having gone 21 cycles without a rerun, the difference between them and Kaveh is that they had reruns before, whereas this fashionable gentleman has never reappeared since the day he came out. In addition to not having been given a repeat performance, Kaveh is one of if not the least used Dendro character in the history of the game. It's been a while since I made an episode on a 4-star character, but this guy's definitely deserving of one. Today we'll be discussing why no one plays Kaveh in Genshin Impact. Very frequently, whenever I make a Why No One Plays episode, I get a cluster of comments that go along the lines of "no one has them," which technically is applicable for the majority of 5-stars. For example, anyone who joined the game from version 3.2 onwards is unable to acquire Albedo, seeing as he's gone 29 cycles without a rerun. But even if a 4-star doesn't get featured on event banners, the fact that they are available all year round means eventually, sooner or later, you should be able to acquire at least one. But as I brought up, the longer the game goes on, the more improbable this becomes, as the chance of you randomly pulling a specific 4-star is infinitesimal to say the least. Kaveh's absence from Genshin's banner system definitely contributes to his popularity or lack thereof more so than others. Ordinarily, I make Why No One Plays episodes under the assumption that people have them but choose not to play them, but this is a unique situation that deserves a bigger spotlight. If you weren't playing the game during version 3.6, which understandably many people weren't in light of the latter patches of a version being notoriously devoid of content, you were never granted a second opportunity to go after him. People have come up with different conspiracy theories on why he's gone this long without a reappearance. The dominant narrative on the matter has to do with the major game-breaking exploits that took place with the character in question. For the uninitiated, Kaveh's elemental skill artistic ingenuity gives him a unique interaction with Bloom cores where he can instantly rupture them, bypassing the need for an Electro or Pyro unit to channel Hyper Bloom or Burgeon. Through a series of injected plugins or APKs, I forget the exact method of performing this exploit, you can modify Kaveh's skill to where instead of despawning assets with IDs corresponding to Bloom cores, you would instead delete all interactable entities within a skill's detection radius, giving players the power to literally remove key gameplay elements from the world. Clips were showing players removing chests, NPCs, statues of the 7 even. Taken into co-op, malicious individuals were able to perform this on other players' worlds, permanently removing things from the game. Not even restarting or performing a file integrity check would resolve it. Those things were gone forever. Depending on what was taken from the game, the victim would essentially be soft-locked, unable to progress through the main story or even collect rewards from domains if they deleted the Ermin Soul tree at the end of it. Suffice to say, this was a very critical problem, causing players to be paranoid of co-oping with strangers. Expectedly, this was a very controversial issue that has sort of led to becoming a meme where Kaveh's powers of deletion were so strong, he accidentally deleted himself from the game, explaining why he's never gotten a rerun. In all likelihood, I don't think the infamous Kaveh exploit is the reason he hasn't had a rerun, as now that everything's been fixed and addressed, he's just like any other unit. So let's actually get to the part where I talk about his gameplay issues. The Dendro element has been a contender for the strongest element in the game since the day it came out. While the vast majority of players, myself included, agree that Hydro is far and away number 1, a big part of that was because of how prevalent Dendro and its reactions have been throughout version 3 and still in version 4. Further lending credence to the element's prominence are the characters. While Dendro has the lowest number of playable units at only 9 so far, virtually all of its cast members are useful in some way, shape, or form. Even its quote-unquote weakest units like Dendro MC and Kale have substantially higher deployment value than the black sheeps of other elements. From my point of view, I consider there to be no bad Dendro character owing to how powerful its reactions are in offering a very high damage floor. However, if I had to choose which one carries the least equity, it's most likely Kaveh. To make it perfectly clear, I'm not saying he's bad. I literally just got done saying that even Dendro's worst characters are far better than the other elements' worst. But Kaveh suffers from a combination of issues that make an otherwise usable character, frankly, irrelevant. Small in number its roster may be, Dendro's topside dominance is on par with Pyro's. Prevailing Wisdom understands who Tao Bennett and Xiangling's stranglehold over Pyro's lineup, causing a massive divide between the quote-unquote good and bad characters. It wasn't until just recently in version 4 when we received 3 units that Pyro finally had more strong contenders. Dendro's facing a similar predicament right now. Not too long into version 3, we received 3 extremely powerful Dendro units. I'll hate them, a main damage dealer and currently one of the top DPS units in the game. Nahida, a sub-DPS and arguably the most valuable character in the game, and Baiju, one of the best healers in the game. These 3 units are so efficient, so party agnostic, and so easy to use that they effectively monopolize every single Dendro party in the game, with no exceptions. Whether Bloom or Quicken, Quickstop rotation or on-field carry, short burst rotations or long protracted fights, I'll hate them Baiju and Nahida could do them all either by themselves or together. With these 3 units, you practically have zero reason to pull for any other Dendro character, really until the end of time, especially Nahida since it's unlikely for Hoyo to power creep their Archons anytime soon. If a character were to come out who was blatantly stronger than Nahida, Furina, Shogun, Zhongli, or even Venti in their respective fields, it would fundamentally alter Genshin Impact at its core. How this adversely affects Kaveh is that for all intents and purposes, and the few Kaveh mains out there probably also agree, his market value is almost non-existent courtesy of his competition, namely his roommate. Both Alhaitham and Kaveh are main damage dealers. Both of them place great emphasis on Dendro reactions to supplement their damage. One just does it better than the other in every conceivable way. Aside from his skill detonating Bloom cores immediately, Kaveh's ultimate can also do the same thing on cast, while subsequently granting a Dendro infusion to his attacks and a buff to his party that increases Bloom core damage, though he loses both if he switches out. Visually, the green aura they gave to his claymore and the sword trails are absolutely gorgeous. Kaveh's just a visually satisfying character overall. But from a pragmatic standpoint, his playstyle directly clashes with Alhaitham despite the two having different weapon types. Because of the infusion effect on his burst and being a claymore user, Kaveh is expected to stay on field for long stretches of time, so you can get as much out of the Dendro auras and Bloom core enhancements as you can. However, Alhaitham also has the same property of Dendro attacks, only his uptime is more consistent due to not being tied to a burst. Furthermore, he can work in either Bloom or spread teams, whereas Kaveh, as a result of being a Claymore user, therefore having slow attacks and his direct synergy with the reaction, can only work in Bloom teams, making him a more niche unit. It might seem unfair for a 4-star unit to be directly compared to a 5-star, as their lower performance theoretically should be offset by their greater accessibility. But that's all the more reason why the whole no one plays them because no one has them clause applies to Kaveh more than anyone else. He's just as difficult to acquire as a 5-star character, if not more. Taking into account how the only way you can obtain him right now is to achieve that 1 in a million chance of stumbling upon him off banner, it's straight up cheaper to get a C6 Alhaitham right now than it is to get a C6 Kaveh. Speaking of which, I'm not sure when you'll see this video, but Alhaitham's been enjoying a second rerun at the moment, so yeah, tough shit. While Kaveh is the only character so far who can rupture Dendro cores on demand, offensively channeling Dendro cores has never been a point of weakness to the element to begin with. And there's an aspect to Bloom cores that works against Kaveh's maximum efficiency. Bloom cores have a 0.5 second internal cooldown on them per source of activation, meaning, if say you have 2 Bloom cores that were spawned by the same character and you detonate both of them with Kaveh's skill, only 1 core will damage the target, so you can't stack 50 Bloom cores from one person and blow them up all at the same time. You need a Bloom core from different sources. This is the main reason why Hyper Bloom is such a strong reaction, because you're spacing out the Bloom cores ever so slightly, whereas Kaveh's skill and burst explode all of them simultaneously, even though that's not efficient. Moreover, Hyper Bloom and Burgeon both increase the strength of Dendro cores, so it's better to apply Electro and Pyro to those cores to deal damage instead of using Kaveh's skill to rupture them. This is supposed to be made up for by Kaveh's innate property of increasing Bloom core damage, but there are other characters with the ability to increase Bloom core damage, and they vastly exceed Kaveh's numbers in that respect. Baiju has bonus damage on elemental reactions on top of all of his other forms of utility. Nilou might be a Hydro character, but she's more of a hybrid as she's strictly tied to Bloom teams. Her Bountiful cores not only deal more damage, but they explode in a larger radius, and faster too. Granted, it's not immediate detonation, but she makes up for that by not needing to be on field. Anyone on her team can achieve this. Meanwhile, Kaveh's status as a main DPS obligates him to be the active character. Additionally, between the two elements, Hydro is a better element for driving Bloom cores, not Dendro. Generally, you want Dendro to be the aura quote-unquote, while Hydro is a triggering element, kind of like how in Vaporized teams you want as many Hydro units as possible and only one Pyro. That's also why Nahida is the most overpowered 5-year-old to ever exist. Her skill, all schemes to know, is a Dendro aura to end all Dendro auras. Here's the issue. If you want to run double Dendro like Nahida and Kaveh, Kaveh is forced to have 2 Hydro units because you need to have more people who can proc Dendro cores, which means you can't run Nahida with Kaveh, since if you do, what you have is 2 Hydro, 2 Dendro pushing you into a Nilou team. In fairness, you can stack both Nilou and Kaveh's Dendro core enhancements on top of one another, but securing a spot on Nilou's team is almost impossible for him. She's very popular among Dendro characters. Kaveh has to fight an uphill battle on 2 sides. For on-field, once again, Alhaitham can go into any team Kaveh can and outperform him without question. Maybe Kaveh does better in Virgin teams, but no one plays Virgin right now, let's be real. Back to Nilou Bloom, Kaveh increases the damage of Bloom cores, but his own damage is subpar, basically undercutting the positives of including him, especially since that's all he brings to the table, while everyone else brings something more, like healing, shielding, or just more damage. Alhaitham doesn't have any buffs to Bloom cores, but he makes up for it through respectably high personal damage, giving him stronger base damage on Bloom cores. Plus, Alhaitham can drive Dendro all the live-long day with his near-permanent uptime. All of these factors result in Kaveh ironically being the worst Dendro unit for Nilou Bloom, despite everything in his kit suggesting that he wants to be in Bloom teams. For off-field, I know that Kaveh's on-field, just bear with me, there's Nahida, Baitu, and Yao. Nahida builds more elemental mastery than anyone knows what to do with. She has permanent uptime and can work either on-field or off-field in Nilou teams, all while dealing massive damage through her skill, and if you have C2 on her, your Bloom cores have a chance of dealing crit damage. Baitu and Yao can restore your team's self-inflicted damage, which to his credit Kaveh can do as well thanks to his A1 passive, but the bottom line is, the competition's heavily stacked even within Kaveh's niche because of how accessible and easy Dendro is to use. The element's best characters are all touted for being seamless and digestible, requiring minimal field time and/or granting easy swaps between teammates whenever needed. With Kaveh losing his empowered state if he switches out, messing up on a rotation with him can lead to a huge loss in DPS, and even if everything does go right, he's sadly not even your second or third or even fourth best choice in his own niche. Now you don't have to take him into Nilou Bloom, you can always just take advantage of his Dendro infusion to drive other teams, but like I said, Dendro is so omnipresent and accessible that anywhere he goes he has to fight everyone else for a spot. If he wants to go into Hyper Bloom, which you shouldn't, Nahida, Alhaitham, Baitu, Yao, literally every Dendro character except Nadi will bully him out of it. If he goes into Virgin, even though Virgin is still underexplored as a niche, again, Nahida, Yao, Baitu, Kirara, Kale, DMC, the entire roster will be there too. It's punishment enough that he's the main DPS in a field predominantly occupied by off-fielders, but they also decided to make him a Claymore user, the slowest basic attack speed and therefore attack-based application in the game, and then they made him a 4-star, which as you know, 4-star on-fielders have a hard time competing against a superior stat line of 5-star on-fielders, and then they gave him a playstyle that hinges on a reaction directly favoring off-fielders. To top it all off, they released him at the end of version 3, well after everyone already got their hands on Nahida, Alhaitham, Baitu, Yao, or all of the above. Speaking of Baitu, Kaveh was released on the same banner as him. If he came out in version 3.0 alongside Nadi, Kale, and DMC, that would have been his only chance to be played, but releasing Kaveh after Alhaitham pretty much set him up for failure right from the get-go. Dendro's a supportive element by nature. While its 2 reactions Quicken and Bloom deal overwhelming amounts of damage, the means of attaining it are more suited for supports and sub-DPSs, hence why most Dendro characters are part of one or the other. Alhaitham manages to excel by having a ton of quality of life effects like hybrid scaling, constant infusion, good application, and very high numbers. Kaveh was not granted the same concessions. It also doesn't help that Dendro's a very insular element, only reacting with Electro, Hydro, and for the 2 players out there who use Burning, Pyro. The other elements can interface with everyone else for different niches. Kaveh has to compete directly against the entire Dendro roster now and forever into the future. I don't want to say he's a fish out of water because his kit makes sense on paper, but I get the same vibe from him that I get from the likes of Toma and Candace, where if they were a different element or imagined a bit differently, they'd actually find more use. As it stands though, he's a really unfortunate character with a lot of good in theory, bad in practice issues. This might be the harshest why no one plays video I made in a while, but it's not explicitly his fault. I'd say Kaveh's a victim of poor game design sense, in a similar fashion to Dia where their kits in theory would have been really good, but it feels like they were implemented by interns or something. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, it would be great if you gave it a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.